now it's the ITV News.
At least 15 Britons have died in the Tunisian beach massacre, and the number could rise. As more images and details emerge of the carnage, it's become Britain's worst terrorist atrocity for a decade.
This is the most significant terrorist attack on British people since 7/7 and highlights the ongoing threat of ISIL.
Tonight, as more survivors fly home, the injured have been speaking of their terrible ordeal.
She's come up the stairs, started firing into the corridor, shooting, obviously got hit. A couple of little explosion bombs or grenades or something like that was going off.
This is ITV News with Jonathan Hill.
Good evening. It's now known that at least 15 Britons were massacred in yesterday's gun attack on a beach in Tunisia, with the government here warning that figure will probably rise even higher in the days to come. The atrocity is now the worst terrorist attack on British citizens since the 7/7 bombings in London 10 years ago. Islamic State extremists said they were behind the killings. Tonight, more British survivors are flying home and have been speaking about their terrible ordeal. Well, live to our correspondent, Geraint Vincent. Geraint.
Jonathan, it's been another awful day here in Susa, a day on which people have been trying to deal with the consequences of terror. I've been to a clinic here in town today where I've seen British holidaymakers with their telltale, sunburnt faces lying in bed with multiple gunshot wounds. And this isn't a war zone, it's a tourist area. And it is deeply shocking to think that until midday yesterday, those people were just enjoying their holiday.
In a place built for rest and relaxation, panic, fear, and the crackle of gunfire. Bodies fell between the sun loungers, and in a lull in the firing, people did what they could to help each other.
She was concerned about her husband, and her husband was just to the right-hand side of the sunbed, out of eyeshot to her, but unfortunately he was dead. So I said, let me take you away, but she didn't want to leave him. She said, what shall I do? Shall I just lay here and pretend I'm dead? So I said, probably in case they come back this way.
Tonight, the identities of some of the dead have begun to emerge. They include 24-year-old Carly Lovett from Gainsborough in Lincolnshire, who was on holiday with her fiancé. And from the West Midlands, Adrian Evans on the left here, and his 19-year-old nephew, Joel Richards, on the right. In the middle is Joel's grandfather, Patrick, who was also killed. Over the last 24 hours, Susa has emptied of thousands of its visitors. This evening, a coach load from the hotel at the centre of the attack. They were holidaymakers, now they're survivors.
It took me 2 hours to find you, didn't it? They wouldn't let them into rooms, see, they locked them all in the rooms. I went up to the reception because I thought everybody would meet there. There was loads of people there, so he wasn't there. And later on he came up and the bloke said, we've been locked in our rooms, we couldn't get out. That's why I couldn't find him for a couple of hours. When I did, oh, my heart.
Smiling between assault rifles, this is the man who carried out the attack. Seferdine Rezgoui was a 23-year-old student who stopped firing when police shot him dead. In the hospitals, Tunisia's emergency services have been trying to save lives. These doctors operated on a woman with 5 gunshot wounds last night, but they know very little about her. No one has been to see her, I understand. She's here alone?
We didn't see nobody from her family or friends. So we are in contact with the authorities of the UK embassy, but still nobody come to see her as friend or member of the family.
On the beach where the blood was spilt, the sand is now marked with flowers. The extent of this tragedy, the toll of this terror, is still being measured, but it is certain that most of that blood was British. Geraint Vincent, ITV News, Susa.
Well, tonight there are still thousands of Britons left behind in Tunisia. Many of them, the injured, lucky to be alive, but scarred both mentally and physically. Today, some have been given first-hand accounts of what happened to them. Our correspondent Neil Connery, who is also in Tunisia, heard some of their stories.
Like so many here, Rebecca Smith and Ross Thompson are struggling to comprehend their ordeal. The couple from Coventry were both injured, despite their desperate efforts to escape the bullets.
Ran up to the second floor into a corridor. There was no exit, there was just a window with a 20-30 foot drop, and the bloke, whoever it was, just come up the stairs, started firing into the corridor, shooting, obviously got hit. A couple of little explosion bombs or grenades or something like that was going off, a couple of them. Just managed to get into a room and barricade it.
Ross was shot in the foot but kept running.
That many dead people, blood and holes in the wall and glass smashed. It's horrible.
The trauma of the past 24 hours fills these hospital rooms. Tony Callahan and his wife are among the injured.
We dived into the room, 6 of us, and I thought my wife was with me. As soon as we got in the room and fell on the floor, they started to barricade the door so that we had some security. And I looked round and my wife wasn't with me. And she was out in the corridor. And she was screaming that, "Help me, I've been shot."
He shows me the bullet-ridden belongings which saved her life.
Inside, it had hit the bag, it had gone in there, it actually ricocheted off my wife's sunglasses. And if I just show you the bullet there, that then shattered the glasses, but it deflected the bullet from going into her stomach down into her leg. I then went down the corridor and there was 2 ladies who were dead in the corridor in swimwear. To my right there was an office and there was a young man sat on a seat holding a lady's hand, and I went and I said, "Is everything okay?" He said, "She's dead."
So many lives taken here, so many changed forever, and some still hanging in the balance. Well, tonight there are British Embassy officials and holiday reps inside this hospital dealing with the bereaved and dealing with the injured as well. There is a degree of frustration here that I've picked up during the day speaking to some of the survivors. They feel that the authorities might not be doing everything that is possible to get them home as quickly as is possible. They are desperate to get back home, desperate to see their families, and desperate for the authorities to try and make that happen as quickly as possible.
Neil Connery, thank you very much indeed. Well, throughout the day, more stories have been emerging about those caught up in the terror attack and the fears of those here for those still missing, including this couple. Sarah Wilson said her fiancé, Matthew James, took a bullet for her and saved her life. Tonight, he's being treated in hospital for 3 bullet wounds. And grandparents John and Janet Stocker have been missing since the attack. Their grandson Samuel from Crawley has launched an online campaign to trace them. Well, David Cameron chaired a meeting of the government's emergency Cobra meeting today and has spoken to the German Chancellor Angela Merkel about the massacre in which at least 1 German also died. Well, to Downing Street and our political correspondent Libby Wiener. Libby, what more can you tell us?
Well, there was a flurry of activity here earlier today. The Prime Minister, as you say, chairing a meeting of Cobra and then speaking to his German and French counterparts about the security situation in Tunisia. Rumours that a substantial number of the dead were Britons were later confirmed by the Foreign Office Minister Tobias Ellwood, who himself lost a brother in the Bali bombing. He warned that this was developing into a tragedy on a scale not seen since the London bombings 10 years ago.
Sadly, I can confirm that at least 15 British nationals were killed in yesterday's atrocity. But I should stress that the number may well rise, as several more have been seriously injured in this horrific attack. This is the most significant terrorist attack on British people since 7/7 and highlights the ongoing threat of ISIL.
Well, Well, earlier the Prime Minister promised that the government would do what it can to help people caught up in the atrocity. But the question is exactly how much can the government do to protect Britons abroad? We are helping to some degree in the fight against Islamic State, but it is in a very limited way. And I think the scale of what's happened in Tunisia will reignite the debate over where Britain's foreign policy goes next.
Libby Vina in Downing Street, thank you. Well, back live to Tunisia and our correspondent Geraint Vincent. Geraint, by all accounts, there seems as if there's more bad news to come in the coming days.
Yeah, and it may come only gradually. We were talking to a British embassy official this evening. He told us that one of the problems they're having with identifying the victims is that they didn't have any ID on them on the beach when they were killed. And now, in some cases, there's no one around to positively identify them. Of the British survivors who are still here, some just can't get a flight home as quickly as they would like. Some are too badly hurt to travel, and others are sitting by the bed of those who are too badly injured to travel. There will be, over the coming days, I'm sure, more horrific stories, some heroic stories, but what is clear tonight is what started as an attack on a Tunisian holiday resort has turned into an attack on the British people.
Geraint Vincent, thanks very much indeed. The Greek debt crisis deepened dramatically today as EU finance ministers meeting in Brussels rejected a request to extend the bailout plan. The decision comes after the Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras called for a national referendum on whether to accept or reject the terms of the deal. The vote could take place a week tomorrow, but that would be too late to beat Tuesday's deadline, by which time Greece must repay £1 billion or leave the country facing a default which could push it out of the euro. In America, an activist removed the controversial Confederate flag from outside the South Carolina Capitol building. The recent church shootings in Charleston has sparked calls for the banner, a symbol of racial oppression to some, to be taken down. And in Wales, a 9-year-old boy has gone missing from the town of Fishguard in Pembrokeshire. Zion Bevan was last seen early this evening. A police helicopter is doing a thorough search of the area with officers and sniffer dogs on the ground. And finally, England's women footballers may be just hours away from making history by reaching the semi-final of the World Cup. But first, they have to beat host nation Canada in front of a 60,000-strong partisan crowd. If they do that, they'll become the most successful women's team in England's history. Kick-off in Vancouver is just after midnight. And that's it. The national weather is next, but from me and the whole team here, thanks for watching. Good night.
Don't you think you owe it to whoever it is the chance to meet his son? What good could that possibly do? I don't know, Mum. But if I was his dad, I would want that option.
Hello? What?
The father of Charity's baby is revealed. Find out who in Emmerdale, Tuesday at 7 on ITV.
No matter what the weather, Green Flag Breakdown Response sponsors the ITV National Weather.
Hello again. Well, next week we have a heat wave coming our way, but currently we have a band of rain working its way towards us. So the further east that you are, you'll stay mostly dry tonight. It just will cloud over ahead of that rainfall. But for western areas, it's going to be cloudy, outbreaks of rain and fairly blustery conditions too. That will take many of us into quite a grim start to the day tomorrow. Now, the further south and east that you are, you should stay dry throughout Sunday. But for the rest of us, it will be cloudy, some patchy rain at times, low brighter skies developing into Scotland towards the end of tomorrow afternoon, and quite contrasting temperatures too. We're looking at highs to the far north of 16 degrees, but in the south we could well hit highs of 24 degrees. And as I say, turning very hot next week. Bye-bye.
Green Flag Breakdown Response sponsors the ITV National Weather.
There's nothing